Hey, RecLess listeners, this is Tom here to remind you that July is right around the corner, which means it's almost Parks and Recreation Month. This year, our friends at the National Recreation and Park Association are celebrating the power of parks and recreation. All month long, NRPA and park and recreation professionals across the country will be highlighting all the ways Parks and Recreation has the power to bring people together, support well-being, and strengthen our communities. Throughout July, NRPA will share stories, resources, and ways to celebrate the incredible work happening in parks and recreation across the country. Park and Recreation Month is a wonderful opportunity to highlight the essential role Parks and Recreation plays in building stronger, healthier, and more connected communities, and we hope you'll join us in celebrating this year. Learn how you can get involved and access this year's resources, like graphics, plug-and-play messaging, sample social media posts, and more at nrpa.org/July. And now, on with the show.
Welcome to Season 6 of RecLess, the podcast making you smarter about the field of parks and recreation. Your hosts are Shane Mize, Jay Tryon, and Tom Venniro, three professional friends, if you know, from around the country, bringing you a surprise guest each episode. This project has made an impact, educates others, and continues to support a growing community. Thank you for being part of it. This is RecLess.
What's up, guys?
What's up, dude?
Is it are you the guest? Tottenham fam in a Tottenham till they kill me shirt. I like it.
Right.
Is that the current coach?
No, it's a couple coaches ago. They killed him. Yeah. He's the one that when I have my camera and it says I'm loving Big Ange, that was Ange Postecoglou. He was one of my favorite coaches there. He wasn't there long, but he didn't have all the success, but I like how he handled the team and the media, and he did win a trophy, which pretty damn rare for us. What's going on? How are y'all?
What's up?
Good.
Yeah, it's just going to be me today. We're just talking about Tottenham.
Peace out. You could have like the star of the team as our guest, and I wouldn't know who they are.
Yeah. But if they love parks, you'd still talk to them?
No, I'm not saying I wouldn't talk to them. I'm just saying I wouldn't know who they are. Like
Yeah, I know.
I don't know a thing about Tottenham or any soccer team.
And nor are you going to. You're anti-soccer.
I don't need to take on another sport. I have enough sports I watch.
There it is, folks. There it is. Tom has been putting Tottenham in his alerts. I don't know if
I am.
when you pause to see a train wreck, I don't know if that's the case. He just wants to see the pile up, the gnashing of teeth.
Well, since I have, it's been a relatively short run of success.
It has. We'd like to keep that going.
Yeah, I haven't seen. I mean, I think they might have lost the first one or so, but since then, I think it was a couple wins and a draw. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 2 wins, 2 draws. I mean, in the last 6 games, you've seen a totally different Tottenham than the rest of us have experienced.
I do also believe one of the first ones was a loss in the very stoppage time.
Yep. So you definitely got some Tottenham experience. Well, fellas, let's get her going. Excited about my guest today. I think we're going to go in some different directions that we've gone previously in discussions, which I'm excited about. But I kind of want to. Oh, I'm supposed to do the intro. Welcome to RecLess. And I'll keep all that in. Make me look as bad of a host as everyone knows me to be at this point. So I didn't do anything else. Welcome to RecLess. I just said that. Tom and Jay are my 2 work colleagues. Tom, how you doing, buddy?
I thought it was work friends.
Well, you're my friend. I'm your colleague. Is that what it is, or vice versa?
Well, whatever it is, work comes in front.
As long as you put that disclaimer out there.
Yes, professional or work has to come in front. I'm doing well. I don't know what your opener question is, but I had a conversation today with a friend of the show. Had a little hour-long chat, or maybe a little longer than an hour, with our friend Mitchell.
Oh, really?
Mitchell Richardson from Oklahoma. Yep, Norman.
Right.
Nice.
So that was fun.
How's he doing?
He's doing great. He's doing great. They're dealing with some fun challenges over there. I learned a lot more than I had known, but we reminisced a little bit about our time in Oklahoma and how
We had such a quick turnaround there. We didn't really get to dive into
no,
Norman much, what they were going through.
no, I'd like to do that. I always say that I'd like to do it again,
Yeah.
So
Jay, how you doing, buddy?
And I would just like to go next time.
Sure.
yeah, well, you were
It's
invited.
not what you said. You said Oklahoma. It's a flyover state. I might go into one of those.
I'm good. I'm good, man. I'm happy to be here. And, Tom started by saying, I don't know what your opening question is, but I don't know if Shane knows what his opening question is. So we're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
That's right. That's true. I didn't know what my opening question was about 7 minutes before I had y'all on. So
Exactly. See?
So let's get to it. Let's all be surprised at the same time. Something we've talked about some, but we haven't talked about as an opening question. And it'll be interesting to see where it goes because I don't know if y'all will 100% think the way I do completely with this question. But I've framing it in such a way that it can go in a couple different spots. But I think one of the surprising things about this podcast to me, and there's been a couple very surprising things, the success of it to some degree, and the for the people that care about it, they really do care about it. I think very quickly for me, vulnerability is something that's getting more popular. You're allowed to be more vulnerable than you used to be. I think that wasn't something that we always projected, at least not in our culture, American culture. You weren't supposed to show weakness or vulnerability in leadership or when you were discussing it. And I think pretty quickly we got into this and we probably self-edited or we were probably trying to be somewhat reserved. And at some point you lose that and you're just trying to have the conversation. You're trying to enjoy the moments, take them where they take you. And you say things that maybe, in hindsight, you're like, well, I don't know if I was going to share that today. I didn't think that that would be on my dance card. And it does leave you a little exposed and not in a bad way. I think sometimes in a really sweet way because people get to see you in a different way. I was thinking of Kim in Utah, and she told me, I don't know, a year and a half ago that she listens to us driving into work. And she'd asked me how comfortable I was. And I shared this story with y'all, how comfortable I was and how comfortable y'all were being the voice in someone's head when they think about Parks and Rec, when they're driving into work, that safe space, that time before they get into these spaces, they're potentially hearing our voice, our thoughts, our opinions on things, and that could in some ways even impact or dictate how they receive information or how they think about things in their day-to-day. And the weight and the responsibility of that, and had we ever really thought about that? I don't think we had. We just thought we were having a conversation. Hopefully people enjoyed listening to it. And so I think the question for me is, in hindsight, whether it was vulnerability or a conversation or topic that you didn't think you'd be comfortable talking about, but you did, what was something that afterwards you thought, should we have shared that? Or were someone's come up to you afterwards, either at a conference or an event, or emailed you later and thanked you for sharing that, or thanked you for talking about that topic that maybe we weren't planning to go to? As people can tell from this intro, with nothing scripted with us. So there's not a lot of plan, even when you're the host. And so it goes in different places. And I think sometimes we look up afterwards like, wow, we didn't know it would go there. And so, what was one of those moments where, whether it was a moment of vulnerability or a topic you didn't think we would get into, that led to somebody, either you self-reflecting or someone else saying, man, I'm glad y'all went there with that. I'll go first. Oh, good. Perfect.
I was going to say, I got one just because of my conversation with Mitchell today. And, we talked a little bit about the podcast. And so I'll go back to Mitchell, but it happened pretty quickly for me. And I'm going to go all the way back to a real good friend of ours. It was maybe episode 5. So I think it was, no, episode 5, episode 1, Katie Keller.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, episode 1. I don't know why I associated 5 with Katie Keller, but either way, episode 1. So this goes so far back.
Because she's been on here 5 freaking times, probably.
Yeah, she has. There were times during that episode too where we were having a conversation, we were comfortable with Katie, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to even just let that out. I remember those conversations, but that's not what this is about. But that's happened. I also would preface this that in no way I'm sure there's other topics that I've discussed, but for you two, I've certainly seen your debates and how those absolutely probably go into other people's conversations and thought processes. So that's enjoyable for me, and also I could imagine the listener. But going back to Katie and then Mitchell, Katie was the first individual to be honest, for me to talk about imposter syndrome. So we've talked about it a ton ever since that Katie episode, but I want to think that that's part of the reason we have talked about it several times with a bunch of different guests and listeners. And then, of course, I've gone to sessions and been more attuned to that, and maybe realizing that I had a little bit of that, or not a little, a lot of that at one point in my career, and still to this day, but didn't necessarily associate it with the vulnerability and the comfortability that people speak about it today, and how natural it is. It's okay to feel that way. It's okay to feel that, am I really supposed to be in this seat? Am I really supposed to be making these decisions? Am I qualified for what they're asking me to do? And we've had Chase talk about it. We've had other individuals talk about it. And Mitchell, in the conversation today, he had thanked us for this podcast and how it's helped him individually. And Mitchell, right at the beginning of our conversation, he had said, yeah, he had referenced Brian Emelson's episode, which released today. So
Hannah is super excited about that one. She listened to it driving back. She had edited it, and she was in East Texas and listened to it all the way driving back. And she said, people are going to love this episode.
Yeah. I mean, he gets vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
Brian gets vulnerable. And I just loved it because it dropped today, and Mitchell's one of our people who listens when they drop, and I appreciate that. But he thanked us for that, and he said, me working through my imposter syndrome and how it's impacted me and given me confidence. And you've just seen it. Remember when you and I met with Mitchell via Zoom when we were planning to go to Oklahoma, and we had reflected a little bit on that today, and he had said, he goes, I didn't know what I was doing. To an extent, I had been only a few weeks into my new position with Norman. Yeah. And on top of that, he was going and working through this conference where he's trying to do a lot of great things that Oklahoma hadn't been doing before. And lo and behold, he goes through that. He worked through his tenure with the state and the state conference. And, the year after that, they get Nile Bott in there as a keynote. They had Rosalind.
Some real speakers in.
Rosalind Johnson. So, yeah, that's what I told him. He was very kind about it. He did say that we were the catalyst to a lot of this. I don't know, I don't know how true that is. It probably was a catalyst to get better people, but either way, it was really great to talk with Mitchell, and we've had several of those conversations with people off the show, off script, offline, of how the conversations here and what we've talked about, which that's one that I really didn't know we were going to get into, let alone the first episode, but as a reoccurring theme. And it's resonated with so many people.
Yeah. Jay, you got one, or you want me to go?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that came to mind was the conversation we had with Barbie Hernandez. And, it's probably one of the first times that we talked with someone about losing their job. And not by choice, obviously, not, voluntarily leaving to go to another position.
Such a public way too.
Yeah. And since then we've had other conversations with people about that as well. So that's the first thing for sure. And I think that's important to hear, especially from the leadership or, city management position, because that's obviously even a more scrutinized position that you're in. And it's such a public facing role that was very political, but like to take it to a totally different direction. When you were talking about vulnerability and conversations that, might have come back after the fact, this was not something I did here with you guys on the podcast, but we recently had a North Carolina presentation that my team did to other people in North Carolina. And it was a virtual thing about the shooting we had at our event last year.
Wow. And
to be honest, like, we haven't talked about that on here at all, I don't think. I know you guys were in the loop with it because I think I told you about it the next day, or we were texting. And, for everyone that listens to the show, I mean, we're all involved in park and rec events. And we had a shooting at our event last year, or one of our events. And I mean, it was an incident I'll never forget. And it was really great for us as a team to come together and do this virtual webinar for North Carolina a couple months ago. And I've had several people that have emailed me or I've seen in person since then and said, hey, like, thank you so much for doing that. Our staff is now putting different safety measures in place, or we're thinking about things differently from a security standpoint, and we're setting up more meetings with our police department, our emergency services, and all these different things are coming from it. Hopefully no one else has to ever go through that again, but the reality is, somebody probably will. So that was probably the most vulnerable kind of conversation we had, because it was the first for us. We've never, you plan for things, but you never think some things are going to happen. And in our case, that something happened, and, we did the best we could, and we'll learn from it and continue to plan for that in the future. If we, have other events that will have that magnitude and scrutiny of just what's going to be expected from us from a security perspective.
Hey, Jay, and I appreciate that vulnerability, and it's amazing that you were willing to and comfortable sharing that. Have you given any thought to if someone else was to reach out to you again, my agency, Shane's, and sharing that with those individuals?
And we absolutely can and will, and open to that conversation. It wouldn't surprise me if we did something on a larger scale, whether it's an NRPA presentation or something, because we had a lot of measures in place that made it a successful incident. And I know that's a weird term to say, but things were handled very smoothly, and we definitely learned from it some things that we could do better. But from point A to point B of when it started to when it ended, and everything that happened in between, like, things were addressed efficiently and great by staff and by our police and by everyone involved. So yeah, we would definitely entertain any conversation that we can to help other agencies.
That's interesting. I was talking to Noons a little while earlier today, as we all at different times in our career are very fortunate to get some time with Chris. I was talking about the scar tissue of leadership, and some of it's seen. You can visibly see an ACL surgery, and you talk to that person about that, and like, yeah, I'll never do that again, or I'll always stretch more. I won't jump down 4 flights of stairs, or whatever it is. And some of the scar tissue that people experience is very internal, whether it's some sort of heart attack or something else that's happened, and that nothing is necessarily external in that. And I feel like leadership has it the same way. There are some things that we probably hold back that we try to learn from, but we don't talk about a lot when we're talking about vulnerability. And there's some things that I think need to be public. The Kirschman conversation and that we had, and a conversation like this where everyone needs to see your scars and everyone needs to learn from your scars, because that is the way the industry doesn't have every city make the same mistake. That's really cool. I'm glad that you are doing that.
Yeah.
And yeah, we haven't really talked about it. I love that this has all gone in a couple different directions. I've talked about having a bit of a social anxiety and introversion to me, and I've had a bunch of people talk to me about that. And we've talked about that on here. So probably wasn't the one I was going to hit up, although I've had people come up to me and feel safe to talk to me about that. And there's no way they would have before. So I appreciate, for those that are listening, in those moments when someone comes up and says, I feel the same way sometimes, it's cool to be seen and to have others know that they don't feel like they're in it alone in some of that stuff. I think for me, it was kind of what I thought Tom was going to hit on with Jay and I. Like, I feel there's this weird thing, because you want to be who you are, you want to project, and I want to be my opinionated himself. Y'all have known me for years. I'm not a wallflower. My opinions are my opinions, and I'll argue for them and defend them. And but when most of the general public disagrees with you, that's not always easy either. Like Capra is something that it's not an easy thing to argue against. It doesn't benefit your career any. There's a lot of distinguished professionals that believe wholeheartedly in it, and then you get great emails from Allie, Rhodes saying, yeah, you're an idiot. I agree with Jay 100%. And so, and I enjoy all those. I enjoy those conversations as well. I think what people like about us, what I like about us, is that we are honest to each other and honest to our opinions. And, I'm sure the Capra, anti-Capra debate will come up again at some point, and Jay and I won't have budged much on our previous thought processes. And I think that's okay. I think there's this world's a big world. There's enough space to to be on one side or the other side of most issues. If you have respect for who you're talking to and you can see how it maybe is super beneficial to them and you wouldn't find a lot of benefit from it, whether that's a German vehicle versus a domestic, or, alcohol versus no alcohol, or working out 12 days a week or not, whatever it is the topics are, and all the political ones that we try to avoid at all times. I think we get better by having conversations as a society. And I think my favorite thing about us is that we always have hard conversations when it's just us three as well, or when it's us three plus another guest and the potential industries listening. So, I think there is a vulnerability to that, but I think on the other side of it's relief that you stayed true to who you were and you argued your side of it. And if people don't see it, I think that's okay.
We will continue the Capra debate, I'm sure. And I was in Nashville and I saw several listeners, including Courtney Weinstock, who said they enjoyed that, and others that were talking to me about, man, you guys need to do that again because it's entertaining, but it's also educational. And there's so many different components of it. Like, the thing is you're going to find more people that are in my corner because more people that have gone through it know the benefits.
Yep.
And like, just prime example, I'm leaving tomorrow to go on a Capra visit, and I'm going to be there for 4 days. And, seeing firsthand, getting that experience with those individuals from that agency and learning their operations and getting tours and talking to their staff, like, I'm going to have hundreds of takeaways that I would never have been able to get if I didn't go visit this agency.
So where do I send my defund Capra shirt to? What agency are you going to?
Mm-hmm.
Just have it ready for you when you get there.
It's not going to work.
I can make Tom laugh a couple times in the episode. I'm fine. Just the chuckle. Okay. So let's get to the guest. Now, two of the three of us on this podcast are national award winners. National, right?
I mean, Jay's an extern and a fellow, probably, right? So
don't let him change the narrative. I'm having fun with this.
Let's see, Shane, have you worked for a gold medal agency? Because I've worked for a gold medal agency and a Capra accredited agency, which is the two highest standards you can get in our industry.
Okay.
So one of us has done those two things.
Okay. Well, then all three of us are national award winners. Congratulations.
There you go.
But I don't think any of us will ever win this national award. This is an NRPA award I knew nothing about. Our guest won it in 2024. It is the National Award, Theodore and Franklin Roosevelt Award for Excellence in Recreation and Park Research. Any chance that y'all are going to be up for that in the next couple years?
Probably not, but Jay's Googling it right now.
No, but I did know of the award because Shane and I, or Tom and I, have actually sat through more Academy banquets, and it's discussed at the Academy banquet, I believe.
You believe?
Well, they have a discussion.
I thought it was the Pugsley. Okay. This person grew up in Hong Kong, moved to Hawaii when they were in high school, graduated from the University of Hawaii at hard name, Manoy. I don't know. They'll have to correct me. My guests come on and correct me every episode, with a degree in economics. Moved to LA, where they went to USC for their graduate work and PhD work in planning, policy, and development. They've written over 80 articles in a dozen different industry journals and magazines, including NRPA's magazine and Open Space Radio's the blog. They're a national speaker at over a dozen different conferences. They currently serve on the NRPA program committee and the City Park Alliance Greater and Greener selection committee for the Austin conference that we're going to be hosting in a couple weeks here in Central Texas. Most importantly, they're a long-suffering Tottenham fan, like Moa. They have spent over 20 years working for the most populated county in the United States. That's LA County. In the areas of regional planning, parks and recreation, before moving to the Chief Sustainability Office as the policy advisor and senior analyst for Los Angeles County. My guest is Clement Lau.
Hey.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Thanks for being on with us.
How you doing?
Jay? Good.
Jay, did y'all's time overlap? Program committee?
So.
Okay.
No, when did you start?
Started last year.
Yeah, so I rolled off in Dallas, so we would have been a year apart.
Okay. Both Jay and I have served on the program committee, And Tom can't say that no matter how he distorts the truth like Jay just did earlier. So that's one thing for sure. Clement, thanks for being on with us. I wanted to start with your articles. 80
Okay.
plus articles, and they've ranged from the impact table tennis has had on your family to being an Asian American in this space, to theme parks versus local parks, which I think Tom would have some interest in, to introversion and leadership. But much like podcasting, I think writing opens you up for quite a bit of vulnerability, especially some of the things that I highlighted there, some of the stuff from your past, some of the stuff culturally that you experience. What was it about something that was in you that you said, I got to get this out. I got to write. I want to be someone that expresses my view of this world to this industry. And how'd you go about that? Like, you just start writing notes to court, love letters to court, and he finally put a couple in a magazine. How'd that work?
I think, you mentioned me going to US and getting my doctorate, and it's actually when it started. With graduate school comes with a lot of reading and writing. And then after finishing school, I just started writing, reaching out to patients, and it's almost like one thing led to another. It just grew, and I realized that, I enjoy doing it, and writing is kind of my outlet. And I think as Shane alluded to, so I'm an introvert, and it's, I think, maybe really strange to folks that this guy can write like thousands of words, but you meet him in person, hardly any words come out of his mouth. And I've just gotten, I think, overwhelmingly positive feedback on my writing. So I just kept going. And I think, like you said, Shane, approach or come up to me and talk about, and that just kind of, I think, kept me going. And I remember, I think, a few years ago, NRPA had, every year they have a theme, right, about whatever it is. And I think a few years ago, it was about telling our story. And I remember writing a blog post exactly about that, and kind of the why and how I tell stories about my work in parks. Although lately, I think the article's been maybe more on the reflective personal side, as I'm no longer in a parks department. I've taken more of a personal perspective in parks. But yeah, I'll pause there.
So we had Jamie Sabak on, I guess, last episode, guys. Was that right? And I actually had her out at Pflugerville this last week. And Jeff had asked her, my assistant director, how long you've been working on your book? And she said, my whole life. Like, it's one of those things that has been bouncing around her head the whole time. Is that how you've kind of felt? Like, especially on the reflective side, like these are things you've been working on for quite a long time in your head, and you just finally felt comfortable enough to get them out in some capacity?
Yeah, for sure. And especially that one on, like, I think it's called Quiet Leadership, and it's about introversion. I've been wanting to write something about that for a while and didn't really get to it until recently. And I think there was some guilt in it sooner, because I had encountered someone I mentored through USC. He was getting into urban planning, and then he decided to quit because he thought that he was too introverted to do the work. And it's like, and I didn't have the words to, I think, encourage him at that time, but he ended up going to a completely different career path. But I was just thinking in my head, there are probably plenty of other folks like that maybe gave up on a career in planning or Parks and Rec because they didn't feel like they wired for it.
Wow, that's well said. Yeah.
We've talked about the wiring before, Clement, so I actually would like to go into that. And I think, Shane, you said that there's individuals who we feel are wired for leadership. That said, the wiring or not, there may be opportunities to become a leader and enter into those positions. And you find yourselves in those positions as an introvert. And so if you wouldn't mind, and I don't know the fine line between wanting people to read your work versus talking about the work. I assume that being that you present at several of these, or over 12 state conferences that you don't mind talking about it, but let's talk about that if you wouldn't mind just elaborating a little bit on the topic of quiet leadership and how does, what's something you can share from either the article or maybe a presentation you've given that is some advice for that introvert out there who's a little bit fearful of taking that next step because of the way that they view themselves, maybe projecting on other individuals or just not feeling like they're wired for the position.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think when I tell my own story, I tell folks I'm the same person I was like 20 plus years ago when I started in the career is kind of a journey of growth. So now I'm being at conference and being up on the stage. For me and maybe for most people, it took a lot of time, a lot of practice, a lot of preparation. And I think that's maybe what comes with most introverts. It's hard for us to, I think, like speak on the spot without thinking and preparing. And
the 2 seconds in your head, Clement, feels like an eternity when you're thinking about what you're fixing to say, doesn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's it. As it relates to leadership, and I think in my most recent article, I talk about what makes introverts or quieter folks, at least from my own experience, is that we listen first. We take the time to understand other people's perspectives. Or when we go into a meeting, we usually are not winging it because we don't feel like we could, so we have to prepare. Yeah, you may have to ask me more questions to help me.
That's what we're here for.
No, this is great. Just elaboration on the concept, quiet leadership. What is, what is quiet leadership?
I think the listening first approach and observing and there's a greater awareness of who we are leading and taking the time to, get to know the staff that, we are leading, that relationship building. I think that's been important to me. I think, some folks might equate like introversion with like being antisocial. I just think for me personally is more comfortable and reaching when I'm actually speaking to people one or in smaller groups, and I get to know them in a more intimate setting versus, kind of a bigger one. And I would just say, I mean, also with quiet leadership, I just feel like there's a perception that someone has to be always, speaking up to be a leader. And I think that's kind of a misconception. And just because someone speaks the most or the loudest, does that make them the most effective leader? I don't think so, but that's kind of seemed to be the dominant narrative.
Hey, we'll be right back. Hey, listener. If you've heard from us before, you know that we love young professionals and furthering this professional as much as we can. That's why we're thrilled to announce our Young Professional Scholarship for the NRPA Conference this fall in Philadelphia. We're also super stoked to partner with Ben Schaefer Recreation. Ben Schaefer Recreation has been helping communities create places to play for more than 100 years. They partner with park and recreation professionals, schools, municipalities, and community organizations to design innovative, inclusive playgrounds and outdoor spaces that bring people of all ages and abilities together. From concept to completion, they're passionate about creating places where communities connect, play, and thrive. Thank you, Ben Schaefer Recreation, and go check out this great opportunity to be awarded a scholarship for the NRPA conference in Philadelphia.
And now, on to the show. That makes a lot of sense. And one just quick follow-up question for you, and Jay was going to jump in. We talked with Ryan Hegreness, and I've seen him do a few presentations where he's talked about the introverted side, and then now I'm getting up in front of a group of individuals that I don't even know. And you just mentioned that maybe this conversation is a little more comfortable in most scenarios, 1 or 2, 3 individuals. For those individuals out there who want to present and feel like it's just something that they feel like they need to conquer, but they have that introvert side, how did you do it? Because now it sounds like you're You're doing it, you're presenting, and you may never, I don't know, you may not really be 100% comfortable with it still, but you do it because you have some really great words and wisdom to share. How would you advise someone to go that path?
I think it's just preparation and repetition. You just keep doing it. And it's, I think, like you said, it probably still not comfortable, still anxious going into it. But I almost all feel like I'm glad I did it afterwards. When I present or speak, I feel like I have good messages to share. And I think part of it is just believing in what I'm sharing.
Well, Clement, let me go a little bit different direction, not just like specific to that topic, but just writing in general. And obviously, Shane mentioned the high volume of articles that you've written. If someone else is listening to this and they have an interest in that, where would you recommend they go to start that process to get some articles published? Or where are you seeing a lot of work that is related to our industry outside of the Park and Rec magazine being published?
So actually when I started, my background is actually more in urban planning before I found more of the park planning. So with urban planning, the association is really the American Planning Association, APA. And they have this monthly magazine. It's kind of generic sounding. It's called the Planning Magazine. And how I got started actually is not too far from what Shane suggested earlier. I contributed letters. I was reading people's articles and I wrote like brief letters commenting on it. And it was getting published. I thought a lot of people were writing letters probably. And that kind of encouraged me. It's kind of nice to see some of your words in print. Right at that time, it was still in print, not like just online. And I think that gave me confidence to write my own articles because the any letters, the editor at that time was like, "Would you like to contribute your own article?" And so I had that opening to do it, and yeah, that's kind of my start, at least with planning within the Parks and Rec field, and NRPA. They have the magazine and the open space blog. I guess I was just fortunate to reach out and then connected with, I think, one of your guests before, Court Jones. He very welcoming of my articles, and so I just kept doing it. I think now for a few years, and so that's actually been my most consistent outlet, time to time.
Yeah.
Into the Parks and Rec magazine.
I think your article, Clement, that I mentioned, that you talked about being an Asian American and being underrepresented in a lot of ways. And we talked a little pre-show, you and I think in the article you mentioned that you walk into a room, people think you're the IT guy. And, that's your reality. Right. And, my question in some ways, so you're the son of some civil servants. So civil service was in your blood, but I think a lot of the Asian families that I know of and that I've been exposed to, they believe heavily in sciences, and they want their kids in a science program, or they want them to be a doctor or maybe even a lawyer or something like that. There's this career aspiration through academic pursuits that doesn't always end up in this field of Parks and Rec, this feel good, this where we're measuring smiles and we're trying to do this thing. And so sometimes culturally that just doesn't seem to align. But and I don't have anything but anecdotal evidence, but I do agree with you that the Asian American population does seem underrepresented in Parks and Rec. I don't see a lot of other Asian American folks working in our industry. Do you think it is some sort of cultural basis of where your parents drive you to go, and your parents don't drive you to go into government because either in whatever countries your parents came from, potentially government isn't a great thing to be associated with, or the pursuit of this more academic view of sciences versus more like social sciences potentially? Where do you think we're failing the Asian American population in recruiting them?
Wow, that's a lot in there.
Yeah.
No, I would just say, yeah, like you said, my parents are civil servants back in Hong Kong, and for them, they actually prioritize being stable and steady. So they had government careers of 20 plus years. I would say at first they actually weren't that crazy about me going to urban planning. They weren't sure about the opportunities there. I would say a lot of, I think, Asian families, not to overgeneralize, but law or medicine or this and the sciences, like you mentioned, kind of the more mainstream fields that are known to be, better pay, give you certain social status. So frankly, Parks and Rec would be nowhere in that picture.
What?
But
you don't get paid well over
maybe
there?
public service. Yeah. I mean, I think your last question about how we Asian Americans. I don't know that there's any like proactive recruitment of Asian Americans in this field. I mean, when I go to the NRPA conferences, that not that many Asians. I think I'm one of the few. But I think what's encouraging to me, I think I noted in my article, I'm seeing more of that in some of our even public agencies like the county parks and rec department. You're seeing more staff, including some higher level leaders. But I don't know that any of that is due to some proactive policy to encourage it, other than just individuals striving or getting in field and doing it themselves.
Clement, can we dive into one of the articles that I just Googled and found? Because I think there's some neat
Yeah.
attributes that we could probably talk about with this. And Shane and Tom and I are on a text chain with a bunch of others, and we continue to kind of talk about the growth of youth sports, and it's become this billionaire business. And there's an article that you did a few years ago titled "Calculating Demand of Sports Fields," and then underneath that it says determining sports fields placement using data and partnerships. And I'm a data-driven guy. We make a ton of decisions in the department I work for now and other departments that I've worked for based off of data. And just kind of curious, I can't read the whole article because I'm not subscribed to this link, but just
I can
generally,
share it with you.
yeah, if you can give me an overview of like what data was pulled to discuss how you determine where you would place sports fields.
Actually, a really good story with that one. So at county parks, I was actually leading something called the Parks Needs Assessment. And it's, a very data-driven effort in which the main idea was to try to figure out which areas of LA County has the highest level of park need and, measure by various metrics, including density and acreage of parks, whether someone can walk to a park within a half mile and things like that. So I was doing a presentation on that at interestingly, it was like American Public Health Association conference. And then someone with me afterwards that was with the US Soccer Foundation. And they were saying, we were looking more data-driven ways to find places where we could invest in soccer. We call them mini pitches. It's like five-a-side soccer. I don't know, you guys have heard of that, but basically like hard courts of soccer. And so they were really interested in the needs assessment. And so I ended up meeting with them, going through that. Long story short, they ended up invest in free mini-pitching in some of our most park poor communities. And so kind of example of using the data and mapping and then connect with, I think, this nonprofit or philanthropic partners that are able to invest in helping to develop these amenities that the communities were lacking.
Clement, you work for a big agency. I've worked for the city of Fort Worth, which is a massive agency here in Texas. And Jay, when he was bragging about all of his national awards, obviously has worked at Mecklenburg County. And they're a huge agency, not just in Charlotte or North Carolina, but comparatively as big, really almost as big as any agency we have in our industry in some ways. And I think when I look back to my time in a large agency, there is both a pleasure and a burden of the strategic partners that you're get to or sometimes forced to work with or work through on projects. It seemed like one of the things I saw from one of your articles is that you had done this Magic Johnson Park, the Irvin Johnson Park, and you'd done some really cool things with it. I think one of my questions was, did you get to work with Magic Johnson? Did you get to work with his family or any representation? Do you have any cool stories that come from some of the celebrity that you might be exposed to in the world of LA?
So park you mentioned is called Urban Magic Johnson Recreation Area. It's located in a community called Willowbrook in South LA. Actually, the land where that park sits. It's over 100 acres, and it got redeveloped recently. So there's some really nice amenities there, including an event center and a lake. Did I get to work with Magic Johnson? No, he came to the ribbon cutting, so I think I
Sure.
pick a group picture with him. I ironically huge park named after him. It was actually named something else before. It was renamed to him, but there are no basketball courts. So that's as the park continues to evolve, maybe that's something that could be adding in the future. So yeah, a few of the LA County park where I think the most famous athletes grew up. I think another example are some of the tennis courts where the Williams sisters
Oh, cool.
first started playing in the Compton area. Yeah, I guess that's kind of what happens when you're in LA. There just sort of connections with celebrities.
Speaking on those lines of where you're LA and Hawaii, Hong Kong even, you were talking about some pretty reputable destinations. Individuals travel to these locations and you've lived them all. And I did, Shane referenced the article that you had written for NRPA about uh, theme parks versus public parks, and I'm assuming there's some more behind just the NRPA article there. And my background, outside of obviously doing what I do, I've been in municipal parks and rec for I don't know for almost 20 years, I want to say, and well, a little more, I guess, if you call part-time work, but either way. So that's what I've known. And then the NRPA conference that took place in Anaheim many years ago was really my first true introduction to what Disney does. And I met some people who work there, Nile Ba. I got a chance to go to the parks, and the story tells the rest. For me, I fell in love with the spaces, and it's influenced my career. It's influenced how I view
Hmm.
what we do. It's influenced how we try to deliver a service level and culture. And so just curious, along those lines, and maybe tying into the article a little bit, my perspective is that we can take and learn a lot from theme parks and these places that people go nationally. They travel to go to these places, but take a lot of the values and bring them to us, bring them locally to the individuals we serve. And I know that, LA County, it's highly more populated than where I'm coming from. But I still think the values stay true. Do you agree with that? Have you taken a lot of those worldly experiences and said, this is what we can see in a local park. This is how it can impact the local community. Not everybody has to pay hundreds of dollars to enter into a theme park.
I mean, I definitely agree that we can learn. I mean, especially with I think customer service or and the design and layout of parks. But I've also noted in my article, there are obvious differences and limitations. Public parks just
Yeah,
don't have that kind of funding
no,
or the resources to do what Disney and other theme parks do. And maybe the biggest difference is, I think most families, unless you're really well off, you're not going there every day, right? Some families even have to save, for a few months to be able to go. So The difference to me is your local park could be where you go even on a daily basis versus a theme park is maybe once a quarter, if even that. So I can contrast the two, but also realize in reality, people go to both. And that's the case for my family, and maybe like an hour away from Disneyland. Part of what made me write that was that I found myself there more often recently, because actually my own daughter, who I brought to parks growing up, and I have these great memories and pictures of her enjoying being at a public park, swings and everything, sadly kind of lost interest in public parks. She's like, I want to do Disneyland, I want to go Universal. And it made me think, well, what is it that these parks offer for to a teenager now, that is much more appealing than a public park. So that's kind of part of the motivation and prompted me to reflect and think about it.
Oh, it's a great thought. We're charged when we have these public parks, we're charged with a lot more impact than I want to say that we feel on the surface. Deep down, with the frequency that these individuals are coming to a public park, I feel like as a, especially municipality, we owe our constituents a place that they can make memories, a place that they can go frequently without the worry of, again, saving up for a year to take a week-long trip, if that's indeed your situation. So it's a really great concept. And I do believe that the contrast, I always looked at it from a way of how we can take from those areas. And I think you're almost seeing the same thing. What are we lacking that we're not hitting all of the individuals who could be potentially using our facilities and our spaces?
Yeah, I agree with that. The Traps Legislative Committee was discussing on a call yesterday, and I don't know what it's like necessarily state parks in y'all's part of the world, but like there's a state park, Possum Kingdom Lake, very popular lake in the DFW area. Lake Pflugerville has as much annual attendance through Placer data as Possum Kingdom does. In fact, we have about 7,000 more people attend annually our lake than even Possum Kingdom Lake. Possum Kingdom Lake is fully staffed. It's got a sheriff's crew. It's got an entrance. You got to pay a fee. Lake Pflugerville is completely unstaffed in some ways. Our teams are out there checking on it. Possum Kingdom or state parks in general, or even national parks and theme parks, aren't taller than our parks in our local municipalities. They just sometimes stand on our shoulders, I feel like in some ways we're kind of the gateway drug to the first interaction with a lot of people have with one of those bigger parks, whereas theme park, national park, state park is their local park, and they enjoy that. And then they say, oh, there's something that has more nature trails in space, or there's something that has roller coaster rides, or there's something that has a body of water that I can fish on. And so, in some ways we're playing our role, but we're not any smaller than them. In fact, I think we're as tall as them in a lot of capacities. I think in some ways the infrastructure just stands on, we're the base of the pyramid, and they're just blocks above us, but I don't think they're any taller than us. I think people get some really great experiences from Disney. Tom has for years talked about a lot of the cool things he gets from Disney, but there's somebody out there that gets those same moments at their local park or at a state park or off a green belt or a trail or, at a tank that was behind their grandparents' house growing up, and so it's like, it's the exposure to all of it. It's it's that we kind of, the tide raises all the boats ultimately is what we're kind of hoping for. We're trying to find our piece of it in some ways.
Yeah, Shay. I mean, my kids, I think anybody who can relate to parenthood can say that my kids, when I talked about this, I don't know which episode, a couple episodes ago, they drive by and they say, let's go to Daddy's playground. And that's a memory that they always have, as if it's this special place because we have that opportunity and privilege to serve and provide those facilities. Now, this is something I've never experienced before, but Jay has. Jay experiences this almost every weekend, I feel like.
Oh, yeah.
You're not going to Disney or Universal, and you're never going to watch well, I should take that back. Disney has the World of Sports. So they somehow have conquered us all. But either way, most of the time you're not going to a theme park and you're going to say, I just watched my son win a championship. And I will never forget that. And my son, inversely, I will remember that day that I had that interception, caught that touchdown at the local park or wherever it was.
The crisp of the feel, how cold it was that day, or it was great.
Yes.
It was just beautiful. The game was great. The atmosphere was great. It was the perfect, like you think of all those moments, but you think of all of them in context to what park or facility hosted you. And if that park or facility, if the weather was great and the field was good and the play was perfect, but the parking lot was a shitty experience, and the signage didn't tell you where to go, and it can't affect all that. So we are those service providers in some ways, and Disney and all those are providing keys for us on how to do it well. But I think we all have to figure out how to apply aspects of that into our spaces. Because Clement's right, not everyone's going to go to Disney. I took my youngest to that park in New Orleans and told her it was Disney, and for years she believed it. City Park.
Wow.
Yeah, she'll be in therapy for years for it, but I didn't have to pay the money I had to pay to take her to Disney. So, Clement, we're going to wrap that up before I expose more vulnerability and possible lawsuit that my daughter sues me for. And we're going to do rapid fire. And it can be about work. It can be about non-work. It can be about anything. We just go around a couple times and just your quick thoughts on whatever we ask about. I think for me, you had plenty of time in Hong Kong before you moved, it sounds like, to Hawaii in high school, that you've probably created some really incredible memories of things that you probably miss, whether it's food or some sort of cultural event or some space that made you feel a certain way along the way. What about Hong Kong and your upbringing do you miss being in LA? Everything.
I would say probably the food, but at the same time, I don't know you guys come to LA, but LA has a lot of places for Chinese food. So
is it anywhere close?
It's close. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So those are actually here. Okay. And then there's like Asian grocery stores, so I could kind of chow snacks that I grew up with. It's kind of amazing what we have here.
What's a public space look like in Hong Kong? We talked about, we had the opportunity to have Victoria from Mexico talk a little bit about what public spaces look like. You've seen what public spaces look like in United States, and what does that look like in Hong Kong?
Public spaces in the most urban areas are very well used, very packed, actually. I mean, if you can imagine, maybe it's New York City would be the closest example, where these tiny apartments, they don't have their own yard, so they really go out and spend time at a public park, even if it's as simple as sitting on a bench, because you just don't have that in your own home. So that is kind of a big difference for me, because you see parks, I think, here in LA, depending on time of day, that are that are empty. But that just wouldn't really happen in Hong Kong. Every single kind of open public space is used.
We have a lot of our public parks, a lot of individuals associate them with sports athletic complexes, and I'm sure LA's different. And I know if you maybe even used at the New York example, you think about there are passive areas and large passive spaces, but a lot of our country, I think anyway, associates a park with this place that has playgrounds and ball fields and pickleball courts and maybe some trails. Is that is that common in Hong Kong, or is it really more of a passive scene where it's a gathering place?
No, it's both. I think so most of the urban parks, they have seating areas, but also all these sports courts that you mentioned, like mostly basketball. Soccer is probably the top sport and playgrounds. But I think what maybe contrary to what people think about Hong Kong, you know, kind of these metropolis, high rises, it actually has a surprisingly, I think, high-pitched land that is what they call country park, but it's more, I think, similar to state and national park out here. It's just these kind of rugged open space that people go to hike, and they can do that on, they don't have to do that really on the weekends. But your day-to-day park is kind of your typical urban park with all these amenities. Some trees, but not a whole lot of like a natural setting.
We talked earlier about the park that you were involved with Magic Johnson, and obviously there have been a ton of iconic athletes and teams in LA. I don't know how much of a sports fan you are, but do you have a favorite team that you root for between, you know, the Lakers, the Kings, all the Dodgers? I mean, there's obviously multiple football teams. There's college teams. There's a mecca of sports in LA. Which one's your favorite?
Yeah, so I went to USC, so I'm supporting all their teams. Although the main sports are like football and basketball, they really haven't been doing that well. And then, you know, as Shane mentioned, root for these Tottenham Hotspur, you know, and the more local soccer teams, the LA Galaxy. Just about everybody's rooting for the other team, LAFC.
That's Will Ferrell's club.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
I
where
do watch a lot of
a former
sports.
Tottenham player plays now. He plays on LAFC. So now Clement has to watch Sonny play against his favorite club. I am going to ask a Tottenham question. Do we stay up? Do we get relegated? What do you think?
I really hope we stay up.
Me too.
And that's, you know, I was thinking about that, and I don't know that there's a like American sport equivalent to that, right?
No.
It's like, who roots for a team to be the 17th league of teams? And that's what we're doing right now.
My wife asks me that every weekend. Why do you do this to yourself?
This is why you lie to your daughter and tell her New Orleans is Disney.
That's right.
You're taking out your frustrations.
Yeah.
Your therapy. Yeah, that's really, Clement, that's Shane and I had that conversation the other day. It's fascinating. Like, you know, baseball has all these different levels, but they just feed up to the next level, and football doesn't even have that. To think that a fan is rooting for your team, yes, to win the championship or the league, but also not to be relegated is such a fascinating and bizarre concept in American sports. It's just unheard of. And, you know, from that perspective, there's also a little bit of an added value to it in a sense, right? Because it's really, you know, live or die, live to see another day, or spend a year
in the minor leagues or whatever.
Leagues, yes.
Yeah. It's a really unique concept, and I don't know if Jay really grasps it much, although he may understand it a little bit. But just for the listener, you have 20 teams in the very top league of all the European soccer leagues. Sometimes Germany and Spain and Italy, they take 2 or 3 or 4 down. It just depends. But every year there's relegation and promotion, and the bottom 3 in England go down to what they call the Championship League, which is their AAA, and the top 3 from that league go up, and the bottom 3 from the Championship League go down to League One, and the top 3 of that go into the Championship League. And so Wrexham, which has made this a very popular thing for people to understand America, was just one league above semi-pro, and they have every year gotten in either won or gotten in the top 3 of their league and continued to promote. And they're just one league below Tottenham in the Championship League. And they didn't ultimately end up promoting. They tried. They didn't have it this year to promote. But meanwhile, Tottenham is one of the richest clubs in the world, has, I think, the second largest stadium in England. And we're in dire straits of being bumped down. And, you know, it's not the Yankees, but it's a team of that magnitude in some capacity playing a triple league, not just a game, a whole season where you're in the triple league level game, which is it's definitely something USA doesn't do. It's fascinating in some ways to watch it from afar. It sucks to be in it, to just be rooting. Tottenham finished 17th last year, so that we're not new to this. This will be 2 years in a row. We're hoping to finish 1 point away from relegation. So it's one of those crazy things, but it definitely makes you appreciate the other Tottenham fans because they're used to going through something that no one else has gone through.
I just appreciate you teaching me. I don't mean to take away from this conversation. It fascinates me. I have one question about that I am not clear on. I understand the free agency is a very unique system as well with buying players. And so is it a double gut to the punch? If Tottenham was to go down, is there a higher likelihood that their top players are going to demand a trade or a buyout because they deserve to be playing in the European League?
They have every right to withhold, but a lot of these players have not managers, agents who negotiate that if you play for a team that gets relegated, they immediately have to release you. So some of our best players have to be released. In some ways, that's actually a relief for us because the hundreds of millions we get from TV revenue every year, we won't get, and we wouldn't be able to afford some of these players either. So like Derek Jeter, if he had a contract to say he wouldn't play for the Yankees if they got moved down into the Toledo Mud Hens League, but without getting all the revenue that team would get, they're not going to sell enough tickets, to be able to afford them. And so, yeah, we're going to lose some players for sure if we get relegated.
Crazy.
It is. Jay is done with soccer talk. He's been shaking his head the whole time. Doesn't care about my plight at all.
We've talked about it on here before, and it's an interesting concept for sure. And I could see some, I don't want to say benefits of it, but it's exciting. I mean, it gives other teams, minor league teams, like a shot at making the big leagues. You dream about that as a minor league player. You hear those stories as AAA baseball players that have been playing in the minors for 10 years, and they get their chance in their first at bat, they hit a home run and they show their family screaming and crying. And it's like, it's not that it's the same, but it kind of is the same because it gives you a chance. So
yeah, there's championship players that are wanting to get on a team like Wrexham that has the ability to win, just so they could say at some point they played in the Premier League that year after they got promoted or whatever. Even if they get demoted or regulated the next year, just the chance to say for a year they got to play Man City and Liverpool and all these other teams.
And here's the other thing, like I'm a big basketball guy and I follow the NBA pretty closely, and like there's going to be some meetings coming up in the offseason about tanking.
Terrible.
And some potential changes in the draft system so that teams don't benefit from tanking and get the automatic first pick in the next draft. And you're almost doing that in that sport so that it doesn't happen. Like you don't want to just tank because you're halfway through the season, you don't have a chance to make the playoffs. Hey, Cooper Flagg's going to be the first pick. Let's get him. And that's what happens in the NBA. And it's been talked about for years. And in soccer, that can't happen. Because you're just done. You're kicked out.
Yeah.
There's no benefit. You lose hundreds of millions of dollars if you take. Yeah.
So in a way, I think it's cool.
Yeah.
You just are on the personal side of it because it's your team.
Yep.
But the structure of it actually does make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it does. It feels like a foreign concept to Americans listening to it, and no American owner would ever allow it, which is why they don't even allow it in our soccer teams. Because if you're an owner that put $5 million into Austin FC, you don't want to see yourself go down.
Yeah.
You want to continue to make sure you're revenue sharing and everything else. But yeah, I think there's a beautiful part of it. If I wasn't involved in it 2 years in a row, I would probably appreciate it better. Clement, man, thanks so much for the time humoring us with our dumb podcast and our soccer talk at the end. I've really appreciated you having you on and your perspective. I enjoyed the articles. I sent a couple to the guys while we've been on this chat. And I think I've learned a lot from them, and hopefully people appreciate your perspective on this podcast.
No, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, it's been.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes,
great talking
thank
to you
you.
guys.
It's really nice to meet you.
Same here.
All right. Well, it's not even like noon there, is it?
No, it's 10:52 in the morning.
Go get some fish tacos.
Ooh. All right.
Bye,
Talk to you
Clement.
later.
Thank you.
Bye.
I was reading a couple of his articles, and we were talking off we actually did a pre-show for a couple minutes because he was like, "What is this podcast?"
So is this is Shane's first pre-show, everyone.
Yeah. But he told me about the Disney thing, and he wrote something for the NRPA magazine about the theme parks, and NRPA wanted to remove all the Disney. They want it to be generic. They want it to be Disney specific.
I noticed that
because they're partners, But it's interesting even when you're writing some of the things you have to maneuver around. I think we all have to maneuver around different things, whether we're talking about something our mayor holds dear or it's something that's important in our community or whatever. So I learned from him.
There's a lot to get into with Clement that we didn't have time. I'm very curious. We didn't even talk about how the research. We talked a little about data, but I want to know how the research goes into the articles, because I'm sure they're not all. We didn't. I almost chimed in and said, hey, for those individuals who are out there who want to write, NRP, you just approach them, and there's a chance that they can find a place for you, right? They're going to maybe want to read something and make sure it's of a standard. However, they're very good about that. And, if the topic's right and the timing's right, they're always looking for information. So anyhow, that article on the theme parks and public parks, knowing what we've talked about with Clement and the award that he's received, I want to know a little bit more about what went into that, the research that goes into his thoughts, because a lot of us, I think, when we write these articles, we're writing from a perspective of, hey, this is what we experienced, and he does. But certainly if you're winning an award about research, a national award, he's going a little bit deeper and scratching the surface a little more maybe than the average person writing an article. The other topic we didn't talk about, and again, I was thinking about it at the end of Rapid Fire, but his thoughts on AI in writing. People are using AI to produce articles, and just curious, what from someone who's so established and successful in writing, what are the thoughts there? Is it accepted? Is it? But anyway, for another day, definitely very intriguing individual and super bright. So I appreciate you bringing him on. Totally different perspective than we typically have heard here.
Yeah, some of these other topics I've seen just by Googling his name, and articles that have come up are definitely interested, and I'm looking forward to diving into them deeper and potentially reaching back out to him and have some conversations.
Yeah, it was fascinating in the conversation I had with him pre-show that, he gets to be a different person when he's writing. I think people will listen to this episode and they'll hear a lot from it. They can also tell he's very introverted. I think introverts in general they answer your questions pretty succinctly, but when you read his stuff, it's I like to toss brilliant around a lot, but it is in some ways. Like he really opens up when he's writing. And I would encourage everyone that listens to this episode to look up his name, Google him on NRPA's side for sure, and see the open space blogs, and Roxy and Court had him on a couple years ago for that needs assessment, and that needs assessment was a huge reason that the bond that they were trying to do passed, because the groundswell of data that he used from that needs assessment to show the underserved communities and where they needed these parks, that it passed 75% in LA County. A parks bond, 75%. And I think it was like millions and millions of dollars, like $450 million. And so it's not one of those things that's easy to pass. It's a sticker shock thing, but he used the data that we talk about so much to show that the need was there. And he almost laid out an argument in such a way that, most of the voters obviously overwhelmingly voted for it. So I am very appreciative of planners. I'm not a planner. And I think we all have benefited at moments in our career from a planner or an architect or an engineer doing the academic type things that my mind just never goes in those directions to make sure our parks are safe, our buildings stand upright to the storms and everything else that they've got to be, they've got to have to rigor against. And so I appreciated having him on, and I really like his perspective when I read his stuff. So until next time.
Yes,
See ya.
it was fun. See you guys.
See you, everyone.
Here at RecLess, we love to give back to the community that we're so passionate about. We do that by providing scholarships to professionals to attend conferences they may not otherwise be able to attend. That's where you come in, sponsorships. If you are interested in a sponsorship, we'd love to connect with you. So this spot could be yours. Contact us today at recklesspod@gmail.com or check us out at recklesspod.com for more details.
This episode of RecLess wouldn't have been possible without the support of our agencies and our better halves, Melissa Salatino, Lindsay Tryon, and our executive producer, Hannah Mize. We also want to thank our director of hashtags and swag, Rooney Taylor, and our team of junior producers, Luke, James, Elizabeth, Grant, and Harper. Stay up to date on all things RecLess by following all of our social media and like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast to ensure you don't miss an episode. See you next time on RecLess.